Well, hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Bruton Hunter, and I work in the Policy Office at the National Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to another session of the NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I'm now pleased to announce this session, which will cover the programs in the Directorate for Geosciences, or GEO. This session will be presented by Rebecca Gast, who is a Program Director for Antarctic Organisms and Ecosystems. Take it away, Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Gast, and I am a Program Director for the Office of Polar Programs in Antarctic Organisms and Ecosystems. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Directorate for Geosciences, of which Polar Programs is a division. So the Directorate of Geosciences is one of 8 divisions in NSF. It is to fund the development of knowledge and technical innovations to understand and adapt the changes in our Earth, ocean, and atmosphere, and accelerate the societal benefits of our investments, as well as training a diverse and inclusive geosciences workforce. Within the Directorate of Geosciences, there are 4 divisions and a program: atmospheric and geospace sciences, ocean sciences, earth sciences, research, innovation, synergies in education, and polar programs. GEO supports a substantial amount of research, but I want to note that it also supports a large amount of infrastructure, instrumentation, and facilities. This includes things like the academic research fleet, polar research stations in Antarctica and Greenland, as well as atmospheric aircraft. When you write a proposal to NSF and GEO, it's a good idea to know what group is best to propose to. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time telling you about the different programs within each of these divisions. First up is atmospheric and geospace sciences. This supports fundamental research in physical, chemical, and biological that impacts composition, phenomena, and behavior between the sun and the Earth. These processes will include weather events, tropospheric weather events, past and present climate, as well as air quality. And again, it supports large, complex facilities that are required for research in the atmosphere, as well as solar terrestrial sciences. And it includes the National Center for Atmospheric Research, or NCAR. There are 3 sections within atmospheric and geospace sciences. This includes the atmosphere section, the geospace section, and NCAR facilities section. And within each of these are sub-programs that usually have a program director or officer associated with them who can help to guide your understanding of what is supported within each of these. Within atmosphere, we have atmospheric chemistry, climate and large-scale dynamics, paleoclimate, and physical and dynamic meteorology. For geospace section, there's aeronomy, the geospace facilities, the magnetospheric physics, solar terrestrial, and space weather groups. The NCAR facilities section supports education and diversity programs within atmospheric and geospace sciences, as well as having the user-requested observing and laboratory facilities. Within the earth sciences section, they're interested in the structure and composition and evolution of the Earth, including processes that include the tree canopy, soils, crust, mantle, and core of the planet. It supports fieldwork, theoretical and computational work, as well as experiments that are both large and small, as well as the infrastructure needed to conduct that work. There are 2 sections within earth sciences. One is the disciplinary programs, the other are the integrated activities. Within the disciplinary programs, they support research focused on geobiology and low-temperature geochemistry, the geomorphology and land use dynamics, geophysics, hydrologic sciences, petrology and geochemistry, sedimentary geology and paleobiology, as well as tectonics. The integrated activities go to support education and human resources, again, instrumentation and facilities, frontier research in earth sciences. There's a cooperative studies of the Earth's deep interior, as well as postdoctoral fellowships and geoinformatics. They also support a lot of other cross-cutting, multidisciplinary programs that are related to geohazards and climate. Within ocean sciences, they support research on the global oceans, including the Great Lakes, and their interactions with the Earth and atmosphere. They support major shared use oceanographic facilities, research vessels and submersibles, as well as the ocean observatories. And there are three sections within ocean sciences. There's the ocean section, which covers biological and physical oceanography, the marine geosciences section, which covers the chemical and marine geology and geophysics, and then the integrative programs section, which covers ocean drilling and education, ocean observatories, the oceanographic instrumentation and technical service, as well as technology and interdisciplinary coordination, the ships and submersibles, as well as ship operations. So again, you see how much that GEO supports the facilities that are required to do a lot of this field research. Within polar programs, they fund work that occurs in Antarctica and the Arctic, research and educational initiatives in all scientific fields relevant to the study of processes in those polar regions. They provide logistical and operational support for the work in Antarctica and in remote locations across the Arctic. Within the polar programs, we have the Antarctic research programs. There is a no fieldwork and a fieldwork solicitation. So we accept proposals that don't require work in the Antarctic. Within those programs, we look at oceans and atmospheric sciences, glaciology, earth sciences, organisms and ecosystems, and astrophysics and geospace. Arctic research programs include work on natural sciences, the systems science, the observing network, social sciences, and research coordination and policy support. Programs that cut across both Arctic and Antarctic are the Polar Cyber Infrastructure, the Data Sample and Reuse, Polar Education and Outreach, and again, a postdoctoral fellowship program. RISE, or Research, Innovation, Synergies, and Education, is a new division in GEO. It supports partnership projects that use both research and education that cut across traditional boundaries within geosciences, encouraging interdisciplinary activities and responding to the critical needs of our geoscience community. We're looking for strategic investments in multidisciplinary research, international activities, education, diversity, and human resource development to ensure a well-educated and diverse U.S. workforce in the geosciences and related technical fields. And within RISE, there are a couple of different programs. We have the Dynamics of Integrated Socio-Environmental Systems, and this is working towards understanding the complex interactions within and among the environmental and human components of that system. Geoscience Opportunities for Leadership and Diversity develops the professional development and geoscience capacity building at minority serving institutions. And the Geosciences Open Science Ecosystem looks to develop sustainable and networked open data science activities that foster inclusive access, as well to data and physical collections, software, advanced computing, and other resources. Again, advancing research and education in the geosciences and building an educated workforce. So right now, I'd like to switch gears a little bit and focus on some opportunities in GEO for early career researchers. And on this slide are primarily graduate and postdoctoral opportunities. You should definitely encourage your students, your graduate students, to apply for graduate research fellowships. This is NSF-wide, and there is an October deadline. I've listed some of the solicitation numbers. You always want to make sure when looking for solicitation that you are looking at the most recent one, because sometimes the information can change. And that is important in writing your grant proposals, because there may be different requirements for different programs. Another graduate opportunity is the Veterans Education and Training Supplement called GEO Vets. This has an open deadline, and it's a supplement to an active NSF GEO grant that is available for U.S. veterans who are students, K through 12 teachers, or two-year college faculty. And this, as I said, occurs as a supplement to an active NSF grant. So you need to contract your cognizant program officer, and you can find that information within the program sites on the NSF website. The four GEO divisions listed here, EAR, OCE, OPP, and AGS, all offer postdoctoral fellowships. Some of them have actual deadlines, others have target dates, and the AGS has no actual deadline. You need to keep this in mind when planning to apply for these, because target dates mean it's a little bit flexible, deadlines mean it's not. There are also some NSF-wide opportunities for early and mid-career researchers. The career program, Faculty Early Career Development Program, has a July deadline, and it supports early career faculty, and this means associate scientists or pre-tenure who have the potential to serve as academic role models. It strongly integrates education and research as a 5-year award, and it's very important that you contact the program officer for the program that you're going to apply to find out if there are any particular issues that you should be aware of or pay attention to in the solicitation. The other is a mid-career advancement program. It has a February target date, and this is established for post-tenure faculty. It provides protected time and resources for these scientists and engineers to rebuild or re-engage in their research programs. So it gives them time to actually learn new skills or pursue new lines of research. And again, talk to your program officers about what might be considered appropriate activities. I'm now going to put in a plug for being a reviewer or a panelist. You can sign up at GEO. We are always looking for new reviewers and panelists. This is one of the best ways to learn about the NSF merit review process. You're going to gain firsthand knowledge of how it works. You're going to learn about the common pitfalls with proposal construction and discover factors that contribute to strong proposals. You'll also have the opportunity to meet colleagues and NSF program officers that manage programs that might be related to your interest. Please do contact us or go ahead and sign up on this site. And speaking of merit review, I know that you've gotten some of this information already, but I wanted to cover it briefly again, because it is important when you're writing a proposal to NSF to understand how it will be reviewed. As we said before, there is a range of deadlines, target dates, and no deadlines for different programs. So be aware of what is appropriate for the program that you're applying to. Most proposals at NSF go through some form of review, either ad hoc, which means external reviews, and or a panel review. Sometimes it's just an internal review. After this review process, the program officer will make a recommendation, and then it goes up to our grants and administration. So again, all of these deadlines and the way things are reviewed varies a bit across NSF and within GEO, so make sure you understand how your review is going to go. Some common mistakes in proposals is that the work is too similar to what has been done before and is viewed as an incremental advance. Techniques and methodology may not be cutting edge. They don't have to always be cutting edge, but they need to be appropriate for what the work that you're trying to do. Also, one of the comments that we see are either that the project is too large, you're trying to do too much, or it's too narrow focused, not making enough advance in the field. Another big criticism that we often see are that the proposed plan won't actually address the stated goals of the project. It's really important to convey to the readers of your proposal what you're going to do in order to answer the questions. So linking the work that you're doing with the questions that you're asking and telling them how the results are going to impact the field. So some best practices when you go to write a proposal: start with a compelling introduction. Be clear about why these are important questions and how it's going to impact the field. Convey the significance of your project. If you have any preliminary data, please do include it. Don't expect reviewers to accept the fact that you say, well, we've done some of this before, and we have an idea. Show some of that information. It doesn't have to be published, but it should be clear to them what the significance is. In talking about where your work is placed, it's handy to include a map. Figures are really great, but don't overdo them. Use them wisely. Make sure they tell a story and that they clearly are useful to explaining why the project, or explaining the aspect of the project that you're trying to tell the reviewer about, or the data that you're trying to express. Be clear in the work plan and timeline. It's easy to include just a brief paragraph about this, as well as explaining the role of each participant. It helps the reviewer to determine whether what you're proposing to do is feasible in the time that you've asked for the grant money. Also, come up with a realistic budget. Ask for the funds that are required to do the work. Don't try to make it too cheap. Reviewers will know that you are cutting corners, and also don't make it too big, because then it doesn't look right either. And as always, if you have any questions about the suitability of your project idea for a program, contact your program officer. I'm not going to talk much about, the intellectual merit part of the review process at all. I'm going to focus here a bit on broader impacts, because we still have questions coming about broader impacts and what are appropriate. One of the biggest problems is that people try to do too much in broader impacts. You don't have to do everything, but what you do needs to be appropriate for the project that you're doing and for your interests. It can include any of these different aspects: teaching and training and learning, undergraduates and graduate students, postdoctoral training. You can interact with teachers and bring them into your science. Broaden the participation of underrepresented groups, building or enhancing partnerships. One problem with international or other agencies is that you have to be careful about what you can put in the budget for them. So please talk to your program officer if you're planning on doing any international or other federal agency broader impacts. Another aspect of broad impacts are the dissemination of science and technological understanding, building infrastructure both at your institution and in other places, as well as local impacts at policies for your state or your other local levels. But what's really, really important is that you choose something that fits with your interests and the project, and that you don't try to do everything. Again, be sure you fully explain what it is you're going to do. Don't treat this as a checklist where you just write down that you're going to do a few things and don't give much information. That's not going to make reviewers happy. We are also seeing requests for assessment. So when possible, please think about how you would assess your broader impacts or their impact. So what if you're declined? Well, it happens to everyone, except those who don't submit, right? Everybody has had proposals declined. Don't get discouraged. Read the reviews more than once and think about them before contacting your program officer. Certainly, you are welcome to contact your program officer to ask questions and clarification, but it's important that you do that once you've thought about what the reviews have said. Don't focus on minutia or cranky comments. Those are probably not what has driven the declination of your proposal. There will be common themes identified across the reviews, especially in the panel summary. So look at those as well as the strengths that are noted. So it's not all bad, but learn from what they viewed as the weaknesses and think about how you can address those. Also, you can ask a friend or a colleague to read the reviews objectively. And what if you're awarded? Well, that's great. That's one of the wonderful things about being a program officer, is being able to tell someone that they've been awarded funds to pursue their research. But even in this instance, you should still read your reviews and panel summary. There are likely to have been some questions raised that may help you to think about how to improve the project that you're doing. When you are writing papers or giving presentations, please remember to cite NSF and the award number. This is really important. It shows that you were awarded funding for the work that you did. It also helps NSF to track and know what exciting science is happening. Please be aware that you will have to submit annual reports and a final report, and you can talk to your program officer about what's required for those. Also look at the PAPPG, which is the proposal guide that contains a lot of information. And develop rapport with your program director. Keep them updated. It's likely that you will have a different program director throughout the life of your award, because many of us are temporary. We rotate through. That shouldn't stop you from talking to your program director or program officer and getting to know them and letting them know when you've got great things happening. Also talk to them if you're having difficulty in making progress due to things beyond your control. We've just sort of gotten through the pandemic, and that slowed down a lot of people's research, but there are always other things that can cause difficulties in making progress. Talk to your program officer. It can help to prevent problems from occurring. And as always, please be a good mentor to your students and the colleagues that you support in your projects. It's a great thing to be able to mentor and collaborate with people on great research. Most of all, stay informed about what's happening in the division that you're working in. There's a GEO page on the NSF website. It contains information on all the different programs and divisions. You can sign up for newsletters. You can sign up for email updates. There's a lot of information in there that will help you to complete your science and perhaps think of new science to do. So with that, thank you very much for joining, and we'll take some questions.
Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. Everyone, I encourage you to submit questions. We have a few in the Q&A right now, which I'll read to Rebecca for response, but I encourage you to continue to submit the questions there. So Rebecca, are PIs required to provide evidence of previous success in broader impacts analogous to preliminary data? If not, how can reviewers be confident that the broader impacts can be accomplished?
If you have some prior results or information about broader impacts that you've accomplished, please do include it. It's always good if you have, you can have, I believe you can have letters of collaboration that indicate that you will be working with someone. Those are important to include. I don't believe that we are allowing URLs to be used as part of evidence for broader impacts, but when possible, do describe outcomes from any of your prior broader impacts. And it's also an assessment of, by the panel and the reviewers, of whether you've convinced them that you can do some of these new broader impacts. And maybe Mike has some more experience with dealing with panels on this.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is it's you're telling a story, you're trying to be convincing around your story, so that involves what you want to do, but I think most importantly, how you're going to measure your own success. So make sure that you include in, as part of your broader impacts, how the metrics for what you're going to use to determine your own success. And I think that helps convince panel members and other reviewers that you have a good plan moving forward.
Thank you for that. And hello, Michael. I did not mean to ignore you. I think I
Oh, no
didn't
worries.
see you there. Hello there. So that falls in line. There was another question very similar to that one. So hopefully that answered it for the person in the audience. If your research is based on experimental methods and developing techniques, how would you justify this if you don't have preliminary data? So similar to not having the data. Yeah. Okay. If you're planning to submit a career proposal that involves field work in polar regions, will you need to acquire approval for the project prior to submitting your career proposal in the July deadline?
Yes. That's
Short and sweet.
It is. It's
Yes.
a requirement in the fieldwork solicitation, and part of that, it is something that's been rolled out recently, but it's to help the PIs to understand what fieldwork we can support, and it gives them a chance then to reconsider if parts of their fieldwork are not supportable, so they can write a more competitive proposal. But also, if you're planning to do a project with fieldwork, talk to your program officers. It's really important.
Okay, thank you. If your project has significant overlap between two EAR awards, how would you select the better fit?
By awards, I'm assuming you mean the programs or potential funding.
That's what I'm thinking, not awards yet. So unless the person wants to correct that, I don't believe, it says awards, but I don't believe they're actual awards yet. Yes.
Right. I'm going to say this a lot, and so Mike probably ask the program officers that are involved with those, the two different programs or areas. They'll be able to help you sort that out. And within OPP, while we have our different areas of expertise, often we will, if a project or a proposal overlaps more than one of those, we will bring in other program officers to help manage that project.
And a quick one for you, Michael. They would like to know where they can find your Zoom background. They think it's awesome.
I'll put that in the chat. Give me just a second. There's a
Excellent.
bunch of them. This one is like this penguin is pecking me in the ear the whole time. So
Yeah, he cringes a little bit away from it.
I'll add this one into the chat if that helps.
There are quite a few of those that they've come up with different. There's some for the Arctic as well that have narwhals on them and a polar bear.
Nice.
So.
Okay. And just the question that I asked previous, the correction was made. They meant programs, not awards. So just as we thought. Okay. Where can we find the contact information for the program managers for the specific discipline areas?
That will be on the web page. So you go, I'll say to Office of Polar Programs, and you'll be able to find the email and phone numbers for the program officers for each of the areas. And that's consistent throughout all of GEO and all of NSF.
All right, and if you're looking at a solicitation, of course, it's always in that solicitation as well, contact information there also. Okay. Let's see. So again, I encourage you all to send more questions in. You have us for 30 more minutes, and we would like to give you, an opportunity to pick our brains. So please do so. So can you expand on working in developing countries as a broader impact? Is this something that NSF funds? Does NSF fund work in developing countries?
So I can answer a little bit of that, but Mike may have more experience with this. So sometimes we will fund collaborations, but only the US portion of it.
Right.
If it's a broader impact, there can be some support for international participants, but only once they're in the US. You cannot provide, I don't believe you can provide travel funds, but you can provide housing or lodging reimbursement for them. There are some some programs or some established interactions with international groups. For example, we have one with England or the UK. It's I think it's NERC. Yeah, Mike may need to clear these up, but there are established connections so that you can collaborate with international researchers. Mike?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, what I would look at from a broader impacts perspective is, we're using U.S. taxpayer funds to fund research. And so in the end, there should be some payoff to the U.S. taxpayers for the hard work that everybody's doing with respect to their research. So I would say if you can keep focused on things that have a clear and demonstrable impact on the mission of NSF, the U.S. economy, U.S. taxpayers, I think that's the best thing to do. That involves something that is a part of a developing, working in a developing country. And I would say, again, the key that I would use here is talk to your program officer about that to see if that's something that's appropriate to add in as part of your proposal.
Okay. And Rebecca, NERC, did you mean, is it Natural Environment Research Council? That's what I think that's the one I think that's what it is. I looked it up for you while you were talking, and I put NSF with it, so I believe that's it. So we're going to say yes, that's it, but okay. Yes. So thank you for that.
Again, talk to the program officers and
yes. Okay. Let's see. On good. More questions coming in. Do you recommend to submit a letter of intent before submitting a full proposal, even if that letter of intent is not required by the solicitation?
Yes, this is part of getting to know or establishing a rapport with your program officers. And it doesn't even have to be a very long letter. You send a short email with a basic outline of what you're interested in, and we can go on from there as to whether it's appropriate for this particular area that we're working in, or if there's a different group that would be better.
And is it frowned upon to submit a proposal from a first-time PI to NSF with no collaborators? Or would program managers prefer that first-time PIs include more senior level personnel on initial proposals to NSF?
I'll let you take that one, Mike.
I love this one.
You were grinning.
There is no restriction on this at all. I think, as early career investigators, please feel free that if you have, I guess what I'd say is that what you want to do is if your science story involves the capabilities that you own yourself, and that you don't need collaborators to get to from the intellectual merit to the end product, then I would say, please just put yourself on as the PI. If there are other collaborators that are necessary, for example, radiocarbon dating labs or other such thing, then you will need to add those, because that would obviously be a hole in trying to get to solving your hypothesis. I would say do not gratuitously put on senior investigators as part of your proposal if they're not necessary. Put them on if they're acting as a mentor to you, and make sure that their budgeted amount is proportional to that mentoring. One of the things that I am very keen on is when I see a proposal where the lead author is a later career or senior investigator, but all of the work is being done by the secondary author or the co-PI on the proposal. So I like to see those things reversed, where if the work's being done by the co-PI, the early career proposal, that person is the lead PI, and that the senior person is on as a mentor or as somebody who's adding intellectual value, but at a lower percentage of the budgeted cost for the proposal. So I hope that makes sense. I think most importantly, to summarize, you need to put on the proposal the people that you need to have to help move the proposal from intellectual merit through the hypothesis phase to testing, and then on to your publication phase, and just put those people on that are essential. Secondly, as an early career person, do not hesitate to put yourself on as the first author, or the first, the lead PI, excuse me.
Oh, and I noticed in my recording that had a slip of the tongue on the career proposal part where I said associate scientist, and that is not correct. They are assistant scientists pre-tenure.
Okay. This is a question on eligibility. Would it be possible to have a co-PI from a university in Canada?
I don't know. You're muted, Mike.
So I apologize. I think the issue is if they have a position at a U.S. institution, then they can be listed as a co-PI from that U.S. institution. If they are for foreign collaborators, those folks are generally just put on as collaborators on the proposal.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I would say from policy as well. Okay. Are there mechanisms in GEO to fund instruments, equipment, or infrastructure?
Yes. That's I don't know exactly which ones they are. Mike might know, but there are certainly opportunities.
So I would say the top three that come to mind for me are the mid-scale opportunities, which are generally proposals that are 20 million for mid-scale 2, and I can't remember the top end of the mid-scale 1 right now, but I think it's like on the order of 70 million. So very big infrastructure proposals. There's if you Google NSF mid-scale 1, mid-scale 2, you'll get to the solicitations for those. There's also the MRI proposals, which are used for specifically buying equipment that is used for community benefit. And then EAR definitely has a facilities and instrumentation group that is that funds facility type activities and instrumentation type activities. And the Office of Polar Programs also has one where we fund similar things. Primarily, we fund instrumentation that helps us get research done in the Antarctic or in the Arctic. So those are the options there. Again, I think your key solution path here is to contact your program officer that you're interested in submitting your science proposal to, discuss with them that you might have some instrumentation or some kind of a facility component to your proposal, and then let them help guide you in the best way to write that in as part of your proposal.
Okay. Can you submit a general proposal, for example, meaning not for a specific call, basically an unsolicited proposal at any time to NSF?
So, yeah, that's no. there are. I get that's the kind of these. Well, so there are core solicitations. So, biological oceanography has a core solicitation to which you can submit a proposal. Chemical oceanography does that. Antarctic has our non-field work and our field work, and those proposals cover a very wide range of subjects. So there is not really a way to submit a proposal that doesn't go to a solicitation, but there are some very broad solicitations available.
And so in other areas of NSF, so the answer, maybe perhaps outside of GEO, is yes, you can submit unsolicited proposals. You will be submitting them to the PAP guide, the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. So yes, you can do that. I encourage you to speak with the program officer to see where your idea fits. But yes, you can submit an unsolicited proposal. As Rebecca was saying, maybe with GEO, they're more focused areas so you would encourage submitting to a solicitation, but just in general to NSF, yes, you can. But again, you should speak with the program officer to kind of help guide where that proposal should go. Okay. Let's see, more have come in here. Let's see. Let me see. Are URLs allowed in documents other than project description? For example, data management plan or facilities, equipment, and other resources sections of the proposal.
Mike, you're laughing at me again. I'm still kind of new to this. I'm going to say no, but
yes. Yes, other sections you can, but go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say you can in the data management plans and things like that. I think the reason why I'm hesitating here is because URLs tend to be things that either get miscopied or oftentimes can go stale. And if a program officer or panel is looking at your data management plan, they click on a link and there's nothing there, it actually doesn't feel good, right? So the more you can verbally describe things, I think the better off you are. Definitely not allowed in the main components of the proposal.
Okay. Is it okay if the work that you're actually carrying out after getting the award from NSF is slightly different than what you had originally proposed to do? So what you actually are carrying out differs from what you proposed to NSF. Is that okay?
It depends on how much your scope changes. And again, we're going to see, you're hearing this a lot. Talk to your program officer about this. We fully expect that there will be aspects of your project that change between the time that you've submitted it and it gets funded and you start progressing through the work. But if it's a dramatic change, that may require some approval.
Yeah.
Certainly a discussion.
I can follow up on two things here. I think if I could give folks on the call a couple of bits of wisdom. The first one is that you've heard a lot, call your program officer, talk to them. Second of all is the PAPPG, the proposal award and something or other guide. Maybe allow me. Sorry about that.
Everyone knows the name of it.
I just know it by the acronym, but it's a document that basically lays out all aspects of the NSF proposal award process. And in that, it specifically says you can't change scope without permission from NSF. So we all know that as you move through your research, little things will change. But again, just check in with your program officer to make sure that you're staying the course with respect to your work.
Yes. Proposal and award policies and procedures guide.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And
I only say that
again.
because my office is the one that puts that out. So I couldn't just let that go. But yes, but that is an area where you will need NSF prior approval. If, as you said, there are changes you may have proposed, or you thought this was one outcome would happen, is changing as you go through the course of your project. But if the scope or objective of your project changes, then you need prior NSF approval. You need to come in, program officer, grants and agreements officer, because at that point it's an award. So yes, you don't just change it and keep moving. You do have to come in to NSF for prior approval.
That's a really good way of putting it, Sam. If you are changing something that it's changing an objective, it's not just a procedural change, it's something larger. Yes.
Okay. And I'll read this question, but then they put at the end that they think is probably better answered in another section and session. I believe that's the case. But how is the GEO Directorate feeling about the rollout of the submission of safe and inclusive research plan? Any lessons learned or anticipated changes on this requirement or process? Then it says this question may be better answered in the policy session, but they thought they'd throw it out here anyway. And it is better, I believe, better addressed in that session, which is tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow afternoon. But GEO, you all still may want to speak to it from the GEO perspective, just speaking about the safe and inclusive research plan.
So I can talk a little bit about this because I was involved in one of the panels that had this as one of the it's a preliminary rollout for it, or a trial. It's going to go through some growing pains. The reviewers they thought that it was something that was useful to have, but it's also it needs to be yes, this is just the first time through, so it is going to need some revisions and perhaps some how do we say tweaks for different groups and a little bit more guidance on it. But I think it's something that is good to have, even just because it stimulates people to really think about this. We've done it on several things for Antarctic work, simply because it's a remote, when you're in the field, it's remote, it's difficult. So I don't, maybe the policy group will have more actual information on what they've been seeing, but we're just starting to get some of that information coming from recent panels.
Now, this one question is
Mike
more.
can also talk
Mike,
to
did you want to speak to that one? Sorry about that.
Just really quickly, from just a personal perspective, I think I think all the program officers and I think GEO in general are really enthusiastic about this. I think for a number of reasons, and in particular with respect to the Antarctic program, we really want to ensure a safe and inclusive work environment for everybody. And I think one of the things that this plan does is it actually opens up everybody discussing it, making it a focus of our language and making it a focus of how we go about thinking about doing our work. And I think in the past that might have been something that was more of an afterthought. And I think bringing that up to the front end of the proposal process, making people think about this, think about how they will create a safe and inclusive environment, and then making that part of the award process is really a good thing. So I'm very, very happy that we're moving forward with this.
Okay. No, I lost the question I was about. Where's the one? Okay, I'll go to another one. I'll come back to the one I just lost. Let's see. For the career proposal, could you comment what is expected in the education or research integration, or education and research integration of a career proposal?
I think that what is looked for is a good integration of, or a tie-in between the science that's happening and how that's going to be included in the educational part. So how does it become, how does the science inform the education, and how does the education then impact the science? We like to see this as well when in broader impacts, but so I guess you could in some way think of careers as having a broader impacts on steroids. It's looking for more activity in that aspect and more detailed activity.
Did you want to add anything, Mike, or I can go to the next question?
No, I think
Okay.
Becky covered it very well.
Okay. Okay, so this question is more about, does this fit at NSF? And if so, can you help guide me as to where? I've co-authored 4 academic textbooks as a subject matter expert that address bio threats or weapons of mass destruction, and currently publishing a book that will be completed this summer about bio threats in space and growth. So again, can you help me to know where this best fits, if it is in fact an NSF fit?
That's a good question. I am not quite sure if that's something or where it would fit in.
Right, just from the words I'm reading, it does not look to be an NSF fit to me. Just right off the top, I would not say it absolutely fits within NSF. We'll have to do some more research for that, but I don't see where, thinking of our directorates right off the top, where that would fit. Either of you?
And that might be something for, I guess, DOD, Department of Defense.
Possibly. Possibly, I would encourage that. But otherwise, right off the top, I do not see where that fits in NSF. Okay. Did I use this one? If you plan to use specialized equipment, few of which exist worldwide, should you use the NSF-funded facility? My collaborator is from another country, but can run these analyses at a reduced cost. Also, if there are geopolitical issues between the government and the US, is it discouraged to have them as a PI? So, right, so this is dealing with some, international, so.
Yeah, yes, cost can be an issue. And as long as the facility is able to do the analyses, I would not have an issue with having them run internationally. But again, and yeah, raising the issue of tensions between certain international or certain countries. Again, you're going to have to talk with program officers about that, and
yes, and you would also indicate there are check boxes on the cover sheet where you would indicate, the international checkbox there, and if there is reason, as you said, if the work is, you could justify why that work needs to be done at that facility outside of the U.S. So there's a checkbox where you would indicate that that activity, and then you would further justify. You would have to fully justify why the work cannot be done within the U.S. So it's not a hard and fast no, but you need a justification as to why you are proposing to have the work done at the foreign entity.
Mm-hmm.
I see a question that says, can you include summer salary? But I'm not sure what that is attached to. So if whoever wrote, can you include summer salary? If you could write back with a little more, that may help us out a bit. So I'm not sure what it's there, but I don't know what it's attached to, what they're referring to, just in general.
I thought that for faculty at academic institutions, because they often have 9 months of support, that they can they can either request buyout or just summer salary.
Well, it wouldn't be summer. They can request up to 2 months salary at any time. So summer, that's why I didn't know if it was something specific that they were asking. So it's not a matter of summer or any time of the year. It's just 2 months period.
2 months period.
So right. Summer would not matter. It's just 2 months of salary. So hopefully that helps with that question. It's not about summer. It's just about 2 months summer salary. Okay. Oh, let's see. What else do I? While I keep scrolling here, we have just a few more minutes. Can you all? One person did want to follow up. You all answer the question about if your research is based on experimental methods and developing techniques, how would you justify this if you don't have preliminary data? So someone had to step away and miss the response to that. So can you just repeat what you said about if you how would you justify it if you don't have preliminary data?
I think Mike put it pretty well. Is you're essentially telling a story, and you're going to try and convince the reviewers and of your proposal and the panelists as that what you're proposing to do is reasonable and appropriate for the questions that you're answering or the methods that you're developing. So it becomes an effort to write clearly and concisely and informatively to convince.
Okay. All right, so that helps. Let's see. What is this one? If you write an NSF grant to only fund yourself, but then end up splitting, so I guess it's asking your salary, but then end up splitting that salary between you and a graduate student to work on that project after the work was funded, is that allowable? Okay.
So yeah, this gets into the whole thing of what are you allowed to do with your funds once you've been awarded? Largely, you can change how you spend your funds, but you might want to talk to your program officer about when you're changing salary monies or when you're moving money out of salary.
You must have prior approval, of course, if you're moving money out of participant support. You have full authority to rebudget elsewhere, in the proposal, in your budget, but moving funds out of participant support costs, of course, is where you have to come in for prior approval. Otherwise, as long as you're not making some drastic change where you're moving all of this money out of everywhere else and putting it into salary, so that will, somehow we're going to ask, how is this not changing the scope? If all the money is just going into salary and you've removed it from wherever else you said you needed money to do parts of the project, but otherwise, yeah, you have rebudget authority. But as Rebecca is saying, you also may want to speak with the program officer or grants and agreements officer as you're making certain changes to your project. But in general, you do have rebudget authority.
Yeah, it's never bad to ask. So it's better to ask and be told, oh yeah, that wasn't a problem, but rather than to have them come back and say, oh, what did you do?
Right, what was that? Okay. Any other part? Do you want to speak we have maybe one more minute to chat. Do you want to encourage anything about where do you go for help or importance of being a reviewer? We have about one more minute to give some parting advice.
Yeah, reviewing panelist it's a great way to get experience on what good and bad proposals look like. And we encourage even early career scientists to get involved in reviewing. Think carefully about becoming a panelist. Talk to program officers and let them know you're interested. But if you are not tenured and if you're just starting within a year or two of starting, we may not ask you to do a panel. It's a lot to take on when you're just starting out. But certainly reviewing proposals is a great way to get involved.
And do you have to be a PI in order to be a reviewer?
You don't have to be a faculty member. You can be, we have postdocs who we ask to review.
Okay.
And if you are a PI and you would like to involve your postdoc or your students in the review process, please contact your program officer to let us know and to, we may have some questions or concerns, but overall, because they are confidential, so.
Okay.
I think I just add a couple things. One that I'm really sort of speak to anytime I can in front of folks is the idea of portfolio balance, and that you're basically in charge of your career here in terms of your funding, which is not unlike your 401k or your retirement accounts. You don't want to put everything into one basket. You want to have a diversified portfolio for your research. That would include other federal agencies. It would include other types of working across NSF. So maybe not just, for example, polar programs, but into the to EAR or to other parts of NSF, and looking at awards like your standard science award proposals, standard grants, or eagers, rapids, those types of things. We also have workshop proposals, and it's always great to see, especially early career people, getting involved in getting the community energized around a workshop. And so those workshop proposals are a really great way to build up your career portfolio.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca and Michael, for that. And thank you all for joining us today. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.